Good afternoon, and welcome to the September 29, 2020 special meeting of the Glendale City Council. Due to evolving situation with COVID-19 and health recommendations from LA County Health Department, the Glendale City Council meeting will be available to the public electronically. Due to social distancing requirements, the public will not be able to attend the meeting. This meeting can be viewed on local cable charter, cable and Spectrum Channel 6 and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. You may also stream online through our website, www.glendaleca.gov, by scrolling all the way to the bottom of the web page and selecting live streaming, which is the third icon from the left. For public comments and questions during the meeting, call 818-937-8100, which is on the screen. Please do not call in advance of the agenda item. With this being said, may I have roll call, please?
Councilmember Brotman.
Here.
Devine.
Here.
Kasakian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Mayor Agajanian.
Present. Thank you, Mr. Ajamian. What's next, please?
The agenda for the Tuesday, September 29, 2020 special public meeting of the City Council was posted on Wednesday, September 23, 2020 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. What's next?
1, community development regarding economic development update on business recovery strategy grant programs. A motion approving staff recommendations to Cdbg Measure S grant programs in order to help more small businesses and arts association qualified for funding. B would be motion approving staff recommendations for implementation of Round 2 Cdbg Measure S grant online applications.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Rubik Golanian.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor Agajanian and members of City Council. I'm going to turn it over to Phil Lanzafame to introduce the item, and prior to that, he's going to briefly provide Council with an update on the status of our rental assistance program. Thank you.
Mr. Lanzafame.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, staff is here to present an update on the business assistance programs that Council authorized earlier this year. We are also, as Jennifer Hiramoto will outline for you, recommending some modifications to the guidelines to help a broader distribution of that assistance. The business assistance programs are something that you've heard more about and are much more visible out in the community. We have parklets and alfresco dining on Brand Boulevard. Up in Montrose, we had 2 significant hand sanitizer giveaways where we distributed thousands of gallons of hand sanitizer. Lest you think that we forgot the residential programs, I'd like to put this report in a little bit of context. Generally speaking, between the two, the business programs are far easier to design and implement. One of the hang-ups that we're having with residential is the amount of documentation. And while in the CBDG program for business requires similar documentation, the business owners typically have that readily available. And they can produce it, bank statements, leases, and things of that nature. What we found with the residential is it's taking us a lot of time having to go back and forth through the regular mail, on-phone, telephone interviews. We get some documents, we don't get others. I can't find them. They have to go to the agency. We have tightened those up a little bit and made it easier with drop-offs and pickups so that we don't have to wait for the mail. But still, we're coordinating between 2 departments, and there's times when we need community services and parks to come in. All that to say that it takes a long time to do that. The other hang-up that we're not having with business, but we are a little bit with landlords, are landlords that don't want to participate. We do need them to agree to accept the grant. We need their bank so that we can do a direct deposit. And a handful, 15 or so, have said that they're not interested. But that is another step that we have to go through to get the landlord so that we can send funds directly to the landlord. Now, I know the city council wanted to make sure landlords got the money. That is also a provision and a requirement of HUD, so that can't be changed in any way. We did see a bit of a hang-up in all of this documentation. So staff has met with HUD representatives, and we did get the okay to confirm 20% of our applications. That is, we'll need all of the documentation, we'll need to provide that to HUD for 20%. For the other 80, we can use what's called self-certification. That will help our process move much faster. That's about 80 applications. We've got 30, 35 processed. We have interviews out, and we're waiting for documentation. So we should get there shortly. Once we get to about 125 that we have qualified for the program, we'll release phase 2. The Measure S programs have not also been forgotten. We're updating you now. The business went with both Measure S and the Cdbg program together. That's caused a little bit of confusion, and we'll talk about that in our report. But with respect to the residential, we did the Cdbg first. We'll get that through, and then we'll come back with Measure S. We're currently scheduled to come back to you on October 20th with those guidelines for new programs, the ones that you had outlined. Now, there again, those are a little bit more difficult to design. On 2 of them, we're working with outside partners, the Glendale College in one instance and the Verdugo Job Center on another. So it just took us a little bit more time to design that. We had to work with a partner on it. But those will be coming back October 20th. Of important note, as we move into the update on business assistance, to the extent that we're supporting Glendale-owned businesses or businesses that are employing Glendale residents, your programs are meeting 2 objectives. They are certainly helping people pay the rent, and in some cases, maybe even more so than the residential grant. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask Jennifer to walk through kind of the status of our program, where we've seen some things that we think we could make better, and then ask you for your direction.
Okay, one question I have before we go to Jen. Did you say 15 of the landlords, they did not accept the money on
yeah.
tenants' behalf?
That is correct.
So then what you do?
We had to disqualify the tenant. Because
Disqualify the tenant?
we have to
because the
disqualify
landlord
the
is-
tenant because the funds must go to the landlord, according to HUD's rules and even according to the guidelines that you adopted. Now, had it just been Glendale and what you adopted, I would have come back to you and asked you to waive that. But we're unable to waive that regulation in the Cdbg program. That may not be an issue, wouldn't be an issue unless council wanted to stay firm in our Measure S programs.
But I mean, usually in business, it happens, somebody does not accept the money, you open an escrow account, and then if they kick the tenant, if they want to kick the tenant out, and they say there's some money in there, and he's not taking it. So what good it's gonna do that landlord says, I'm not accepting, and then this tenant will be in trouble?
Mr. Mayor, I know it sounds illogical, and we questioned HUD on it and said if the landlord refuses to sign up and to take the direct deposit, can we distribute the funds? The answer was no.
Anyway, I don't know, Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Garcia, is there any other way? Because the tenant didn't do anything wrong, and I don't understand what it means the landlord is not accepting the money. I mean, it was money everywhere is accepted by anybody when you want to give them money. Why they have to refuse accepting the money, and tenant didn't do anything wrong?
Mr. Mayor, if it were a check that we were just handing to somebody, that I'm sure would be a different story. but the person needs to sign a 1099 so that they claim it as income. They need to give us their bank information so it can be deposited by direct deposit, and they need to sign an agreement. Some of them simply said, I just don't want to go through that paperwork. Some of them said, I don't want to release my financial information. Some of them just didn't respond.
Financial, I don't want to reveal my financial statement.
Banking information.
Banking, bank account number, not banking.
Mr. Mayor, I can only tell you the reasons that we've
No,
been
but we
given.
have to find a way. I mean, I can't believe that we are ignoring those who we are trying to help, in my opinion. Mr. Garcia, do you have anything to add to this?
Mr. Mayor, I really don't. I mean, as Mr. Lansfame noted, his staff has really beaten the bushes on this and tried to find a way around it and hasn't been able to.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lansfame. Hello, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Really,
Her microphone?
today is to
It's a
look
little
at-
hard to hear you, Jennifer.
Her microphone?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. My apologies. The purpose of the update today is really to get your direction on a few administrative and one substantive change to some of our grant programs. Our purpose within the entire city and really under your direction is to get funds to these businesses as quickly as possible. So we've identified a few areas of efficiency. Just for a quick recap, City Council authorized $4.2 million in business recovery grants. And at this point, these are just some of the outcomes. We have retained or created 3,000 jobs through these programs. In large part, just through the al fresco programs and the restaurants. Those are real jobs that you are able to maintain. We've also been able to support about 1,000 businesses, and through the child care program have helped approximately 1,600 families. So you can already start to see the real impact of your efforts. Just a few of the PPE programs, and this is real-time activity that's happening now. We have given out free hand sanitizer to 1,000 residents, 600 businesses, a total of 10,000 gallons distributed. We still have another 30,000 gallons to go. And in fact, we had a pickup event today, this afternoon, and we have another one scheduled. We've also since launched that $500 PPE reimbursement grant. So for businesses that have spent about $500, all they need to do is to upload that receipt and they get a $500 check for any PPE programs. We've at this point received 123 applications and we have a total of 900 total grants. So we continue to advertise this and I will use this opportunity to encourage folks to go to the chooseglendaleca.com/PPE program to please take advantage of this. Next up is the Alfresco. You have seen this program by now. We've had 19 temporary certificate of occupancies. So that means that some businesses, such as We're Pouring, has taken advantage of private dining. We also have the parklets that have been established and have issued a total of 48 sidewalk dining permits. And 68 restaurants have participated in this, and more continue to sign up. And so this has been a very popular program, and I think it's achieved the goal of supporting businesses and boosting consumer confidence.
May I make a comment?
Yes,
And ask a
Mr.
question.
Rotman.
Yeah, I love the Alfresco program. I totally love it. I'm so glad to see it happening. I am a little concerned about a few locations where pedestrian passage is blocked. I know in front of the Carousel and the Panera Bread, there's a problem. I also have walked recently in front of the, now I'm forgetting the name of the place on Montrose, the Blue Cow, what's it called?
Black Cow.
Black Cow. A pedestrian can't get through without being really sandwiched between diners. It's not a good setup there, and I would hope that you can look at that and try to find a solution, maybe extending more into some parklet space there or something, because it is something that we want to avoid.
Thank you, Councilmember Brotman. We appreciate this feedback, and we see some of this as we're out and about. Our role has been to, as these issues come up, please let us know. The Economic Development Team and Business Concierge has trying to walk that very delicate balance of making sure that businesses are supported, but that they're still in compliance with our regulations. So we will follow up on those issues and continue to see what can be done to make sure that we're achieving compliance.
Yeah, and one more thing, if I could, at the Black Cow, I mean, it's extremely popular. I don't want to do anything to reduce that. It's obviously attracting lots of people. I saw people waiting to get seats, so it's wonderful, and we want to encourage it. I don't want to give the wrong impression. I loved when I walked by to see the number of people that were out there.
Duly noted. So moving along then, this is just a quick education about some of the federal funding, because this is one of the points that as we get into the grant programs that we will be discussing. So currently within the several of the grant programs, we have a prohibition against businesses that have received any federal funding. And there are really three different buckets of funding through the COVID support. One was this Economic Injury Disaster Advance. This was a $10,000 grant that did not need to be repaid, that businesses could apply for, and it is $1,000 per employee. This is no longer available, but some businesses have received this. The second is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So this provided working capital up to $2 million. This is still available, but it is a loan, so it does need to be repaid. And just because a business gets this does not mean that they are getting free money. They do need to repay it. And the third was this Paycheck Protection Program. Really the intent here was to make sure that people can stay on the payroll as they were experiencing this hardship through COVID. And this was up to $10 million. This is also a loan. However, there are terms that could be forgiven if the business or nonprofit kept people on the payroll for a certain amount of time. So these are the three areas when we say cannot receive a federal funding or federal loan or grant. This is what we're talking about. And the PPP program is no longer available. So really the meat and potatoes of why we're here today. So we have these three grants, and we have since gone through the first round. We have learned, and now we are hoping to iterate so that we can get the funding out quickly. So the first is this low-income business grant. This was through funding through the Cdbg. There was a total funding of $572,000. To date, we have issued, the city has allocated $195,000. There's 234 applicants that were received, 114 grants are available, 39 applications have been approved, and 37 were still under review, though I've been told this morning we have since gone through all the applications. Important to know, and why we're here today, is that 158 of those 234 applicants had to be disqualified for really the large percentage was either one, they were not in a commercial property, or two, because the businesses did not have a valid lease. So ways to mitigate this issue would be, number one, remove the lease agreement requirement. That's not to say that we still would not require them to be within a commercial zone, but as part of the business registration certificate, every business needs to upload a valid lease agreement at the time of issuance of the BRC. So this would make it reduce the paperwork and just make the process more simple. The second is, again, administrative, and it would allow us to amend the requirement. Right now, we have a business registration certificate. Business must show proof of that. What we're finding is that not all businesses have submitted their BRC, so now they are having to go through and take sometimes 3 to 4 weeks to get that BRC before they can get their funds. What we're suggesting is, let's just make sure that they can show proof, so a receipt that they have paid for this BRC and that they will get it in the mail, but that we can still move forward with processing their application. So that is the recommendation for Cdbg. The second is for the Measure S. So we have more influence over this because these are city funds versus the federal funds. So this one, we have a total of $2.2 million in this pot. To date, we have issued $110,000. So the economic development team, we started with the CDBG, went through that round, that pool first. Now we're moving forward with the Measure S. We received 513 applicants. There's 320 grants that are available. 22 have been approved to date. We still have 221 that are in review. And again, and this is the problem spot here, we've had to disqualify 121 applicants. And as you can see, 48% of those, it was because they received federal funding. And in our conversations with some of these applicants, the funding was as low as $1,000 because they could have received that as part of their part of that federal funding. So what we're suggesting as the proposed guidelines is to remove that federal funding restriction, or at the very least to cap it. So if a business did receive, let's say, $10,000 or more, that they would be ineligible for the grant, but anything less than that, they would be able to receive the city grant. And you can see some of the other percentages here. 27% were not in a commercial property, and 25% did not have a valid lease. And just so you all know, some of the businesses that were not in a commercial property, what we mean by that is there are some home-based businesses that have been running like catering or taxi, childcare, online stores. These are folks that are running these businesses at home, and they may have had a lease, but because of COVID, they terminated the lease. So this is also, it's a very fluid situation. We understand businesses are doing what they can to survive and still have overhead costs. So similar to the CDBG, we would also suggest removing the lease agreement requirement and amending the BRC as I described with the CDBG. And the third program here is Support the Arts. Our colleagues in the Arts and Culture, Library Arts and Culture, are implementing this program. This is $200,000. This was issued on September 1, and to date we've only had one applicant. And we think we know why, and we'll get into that. But there are 13 to 40 grants available, depending on the budget size. Of the one that's submitted, they were disqualified. And to date, we have not issued any funding. And it's not because there's not a need. What we believe the feedback is it's that the federal funding restriction. So especially some of our larger arts organizations, they have received loans from the federal government, they have received grants. They still have very large operating budgets, but zero revenue stream, or a revenue stream that includes donations. And while we could take a look at introducing some sort of cap, it may be that just removing that restriction outright would enable some of these arts organizations to take advantage of this grant.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Who can apply? Can you say exactly who can apply for this arts grants? Because probably it's not clear to general public, at least it's not that clear to me, who can come forward to apply for this grant. Maybe you mention it on this live TV, so our viewers can talk to their relatives, friends, or themselves. They can come forward and apply for this grant.
Yes, I do have Gary Shaffer here, who is the Director of Library Arts and Culture, and we can certainly pull up the details of this, but generally these are arts institutions that have, there's a certain budget threshold. I apologize, I don't have all of the threshold in front of me, and Mr. Shaffer will be able to address that.
Okay, because when I look at these 0 applications, and obviously approved 0, so it shows that it's not clear to those who are involved with this. They don't know they can come forward. Maybe we make it clear today.
Mayor Egajanian, members of the council, Gary Shaffer, Director of Library Arts and Culture. What we seen at the last Arts and Culture Commission meeting, we had 2 groups call in, so they're very well aware of it. And as Jennifer explained, the primary issue was, while they have the 0 funding now, they had applied previously for federal monies and had received them. So That is one of the chief problems right now, yet they are still, that when they received that money was months and months ago. We are now, as you well are aware, 6 months, 7 months into the pandemic. So that's the first problem. Another problem is groups need to have, I believe, a mailing address within the city of Glendale, which seems reasonable, but the Glendale Youth Orchestra, for instance, does not have a business address in the city of Glendale. So that's of other issues. So our belief is that in general, most of the organizations are aware. They simply are not eligible, and I believe the deadline is set for tomorrow. So I think the recommendation from staff is that that deadline be extended and that the prohibition about having applied for other federal funds be removed. Was there anything else recommended?
No, and to answer your question, Mr. Mayor, on the guidelines, I believe that was the original question. We have it on page 3 of the staff report as well. So really, the organization's primary mission is to provide arts and culture programming as demonstrated by more than 50% of the organization's budget to arts programming. And their primary program, 80% or more, must take place in the city. So it really is intended for arts organizations doing programming in the city, and their principal place of business has to be here in the city of Glendale. So again, we believe that there may be just a preliminary search, a minimum of 20 organizations that can qualify for this. We've heard it could be up to 100. So the fact that we've only had one applicant indicates that there is a tweak that we may need to make, and we think it's directly related to the federal funding. We certainly don't think it's not because there's not a need, because we have heard that, and I believe there might be some folks that are calling in today. So our suggestion would be to at least extend the deadline to the 31st, give us a shot, and see if this tweak is enough to make a difference. And if not, then at the end of that time frame, we can certainly reevaluate and see how we can reallocate the funding somewhere else.
I just ask a question, see, because I'm not clear who can come forward still. Let's say if there is a dance group in Glendale, and they previously, before this coronavirus came about, they had performances once a year in Glendale. Are they eligible to come forward to ask for this money?
It seems most definitely they would be able to, yes.
Okay, thank you.
There's no reason they wouldn't.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Botman. I don't know why, excuse me, Mr. Botman. Why the volume level of Mr. Botman is lower than what we have here? Why is adjusted so low that when we talk here, it's loud, and when they call, it's as if it's hard to hear them.
Is it just me, or is it the other people that are on WebEx?
No, I mean, your volume is low, I can tell that. So usually it was not like this previously I complained again. So they have to be, the volume level should be the same as what's in here.
Mr. Mayor, we'll check it out and see if we can adjust the
Okay,
volume later
Mr.
on.
Brotman, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I know we've discussed this, Ben, so I apologize for asking again, but with the arts grants, do we have a fixed dollar amount, or are we applying our judgment based on need, or based on their budget size, or how they've been impacted by COVID, or what?
Yes, as I recall, and I may need to confirm with my counterpart here, but I believe that it is a range, so it's based on the budget size.
Okay. Good. I'm good. And I just wanted to mention something, because somebody wrote to me and was giving me some information about LA County, they've allocated 10 million in CARES Act funding for this arts relief fund, and they have a set of guidelines that they use, and it might be worthwhile taking a look at those. If you can look that up, or I can send that to you, but I would ask that you look at those guidelines and see whether there are any things there that we can adopt if we feel we need to. But I'm certainly in favor of removing this prohibition on having applied for other federal funds, and I think we should do that, and I think we should extend the date.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Najarian.
On the support the arts grants, one applicant, one disqualification. Who was the applicant?
The applicant was the Museum of Neon Art.
And they were disqualified because of the federal fund
Correct.
restriction?
Correct.
And when you talk about, well, let me just leave it at that. Thank you.
Jennifer,
Okay.
may I ask a question, Mayor?
Yes, Miss Paula Devine.
Thank you. Jennifer, was the Museum of Neon, was that a grant or a loan from the federal government that disqualified them?
I believe that it was a loan. They had two types of loans. It was the PPP and the EIDL loan. So the Paycheck protection and the the economic injury disaster loan. So they will have to repay each of those.
Yeah, I really believe that that loans should not count as far as being reimbursed or being covered by the federal government. I think that's just not fair. They're going to have to pay those back. I think they should be eligible for the grants. And I also think that regarding low-income all the businesses, the proof of the payment of the BRC, I think that should be the qualification. The BRC, if I remember correctly, was instituted in lieu of a business tax, so that the city could get a handle on the number of businesses we have in Glendale. And of course, not everybody did what they were supposed to do. So I think that the least we can ask is that they are in the process of getting that BRC, and then they can be eligible for, and then that would take care of the lease agreement, because in order to get that, they have to have the lease agreement, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Those are my feelings about all of these. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's continue, please.
Oh, I thought we were done. Sorry.
We are just about done. The only other update here is really on the timeline. So should council authorize us to move forward with some of these changes, this is the proposed timeline in your staff report, but certainly we can make some amendments here. We would continue the arts application period through October 31st. We've also allowed ourselves a month to do community outreach for all grants. And the only reason we've done this is through this process, we've heard comments, and I'm sure you have too, where you have folks who say, oh, I didn't even know about this. So a more generous timeline would allow us to continue that community outreach, also do webinars to help people educate them on which grants to participate in. And a number of folks have learned about this through Armenian TV as well, so that might be an opportunity for us to promote. We also have then the application period for Cdbg, which would be November 3rd through the 9th, and then looks like a week gap, and then going through the Measure S period. We do suggest having 2 different timeframes for Cdbg and Measure S, just because of feedback we received from applicants who said they were confused about which one to apply for, and therefore that meant if they applied for both, they got disqualified. So we're just trying to avoid that in the future. And then in December, we would issue the lottery results. So with that, that concludes my presentation. Certainly looking forward to any other feedback. And again, just know our team, the economic development team, and really this has been a city effort, from the grants to the alfresco programs to childcare. This is really, as they say, teamwork makes the dream work. So we appreciate all of the leadership and guidance from the council and the city departments. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there any questions from my colleagues?
You know, I have another question.
Yes,
Jennifer,
Mr.
how would you do this? Let's just look at the Measure S business grants. Okay, you had 513 applicants, 121 were disqualified. So you've got a pool of viable, 221 that are viable. Now, let's say we open it up and we change let's say we change the BRC requirement. So you get a new group in there. Are those folks who were qualified under the initial review guaranteed in any way, or are they going to be diluted by this new group under the more relaxed requirements? How would we be fair? I guess that's the point. How would we be
Right.
fair for someone, I got my BRC, I didn't get any federal funding, et cetera. I'm in the hoop. You just need my application to be reviewed, and now council has opened it up. There's a new group, I don't want to say tsunami, but another batch of applications in. Do the review of the initial applicants stop? Do we mix it up again? I mean, how would we be fair? How would you recommend we be fair for those that did the appropriate application, are in the process now, and we're changing the rules midstream?
Great question, and equity is of top of mind for us as well. It just so happens, we think that we've already exhausted the list through the Cdbg. We believe that we're going to exhaust the list of the Measure S folks. We think that by the time round 2 comes about, we will have gone through all of the applicants, and we will probably have some money available. That enables us to do a fresh round.
Fresh round, okay.
And with that, I think it's the most fair, because we would then, if we make any changes, at that point, we will certainly inform every single person who was disqualified in that first round to let them know, this is the new round, these are the new requirements, please apply. I think that's the most fair.
That sounds fair. As far as I can play out in my mind, it's
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have phone calls. Please, let's go to our callers.
Alice Dutton, you're live. Alice?
Yes, hello. Thank you. I'm Alice Dutton. I'm the Director of Development for Antius Theater Company. And speaking on behalf of everyone at Antius, we are proud to be part of the Glendale community, and we are so grateful that the city is working to support local arts organizations through this economic crisis. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today because I wanted to address the restrictions on Measure S grant funding to organizations that have received federal aid during the coronavirus pandemic, as Jennifer has already been speaking about today. Several months ago, Antius was able to secure federal loans through the PPP and EIDL programs. They were awarded on the basis of our staff and budget size as a bridge to help us during this unprecedented emergency situation. And a significant portion of that money will eventually need to be paid back. Some of it may be forgiven, but we don't have that information yet. As many organizations have experienced this year, the PPP loan was initially dispersed with the idea that it would help cover payroll for a matter of weeks until normal operations could resume. But those weeks have turned into months, and our theater doors have been closed since March 13th. And as an intimate-sized performing arts venue, we're not expecting to be able to reopen at full capacity until fall of 2021 at the earliest. So altogether, that will mean that Antius will go a full year and a half without being able to sell tickets. In a normal year, our budget is roughly 70% contributed income and 30% earned income, and most of that is from ticket sales. In the 2019-20 season, when we were still able to present 3 of our usual 4 productions, that ratio shifted to 80% donations and 20% ticket sales. And in 2020-21, with no ticket income and only a small amount of revenue for our online academy classes, over 90% of our income for the coming year will have to come from grants and donations. We're continuing to develop new online programming, which we're choosing to offer for free to the public because we think that's the right thing to do right now. And thanks to the federal support we've received, we've been able to retain our entire full-time staff who've been working from home for the last 6 months. The money from the PPP loan has been spent as it was intended to be in order to keep us moving forward. And now we're seeking additional funding wherever we can so that we can continue our work and be ready to welcome our community back when we're finally able to open our doors again. Antius is a strong organization and we're poised to weather this storm, but we'll need all the support we can get in order to make that happen. This year has been really difficult for donors as well as arts organizations, which is why it's more important than ever for us to have the support of our local government. And we hope the city of Glendale will be able to support us through this very difficult year. And so I thank you for considering removing the restrictions on funding for organizations who've received federal loans. And since Councilmember Brotman mentioned the LA County requirements, I do have that in front of me. And LA County for the CARES program Arts Relief Grant says, grant awards will be based on eligibility and demonstrated need. Awards will range based on the number of applications received, organization budget size, demonstrated losses, and expenditures due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I thank you for your time, and I hope that the city of Glendale can consider something similar.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Carrie Siegel, you're live. Carrie?
Hi, this is Corey Siegel calling from the Museum of Neon Art. And I first wanted to thank the council for all the hard work you have put into supporting the businesses and community in Glendale. It's a heart-rending process during this time. I'm facing this as a boss while I try to support my employees, many which are Glendale residents, while also trying to survive as an institution. I see and feel the care you put into this and your interest in supporting all businesses equitably. I'm calling to urge the council to reconsider limiting the culture grant to those who have not received any funds. Influential cultural centers like Antius, Glendale Arts, and Mona are iconic businesses and serve the community as part of their mission. Most of us have received both PP and EIDL and still have not come close to covering our losses. Unlike restaurants, shopping malls, retail, and other services deemed essential at this time, museums have been classified at the same risk as indoor dining, and performance venues are even further from reopening. This means that though many businesses have been able to take up some operations to support themselves, museums and other cultural institutions are left with very little ways to make income unless they make a sharp pivot, which takes considerable staffing and planning and a re-examination of the mission of the organization at a time when we need to cut costs. The fact that these arts and cultural organizations receive these funds show that there are viable organizations seriously concerned about their survival and dependent upon this funding. In addition to the business model of a nonprofit, does not allow for a mission to stop when funds dry out. A restaurant may not serve food if patrons don't pay. A gym might not offer free exercise classes. But arts and cultural organizations continue their mission even when they can't open their doors. They open their windows. And I think it's really important to nurture arts and culture in Glendale, and these cultural organizations are a key part of that. They're outside of just arts and cultural programming in Glendale. So if these organizations fail at this time, it's going to set the Glendale arts and cultural game plan back. And I really appreciate your consideration at this time and really appreciate all of your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have more calls, Mr.
No,
Ajami?
no, Mayor, that was the last one.
That was the last one? Okay. I just might have a motion for these items.
Mr. Mayor, can I just make a comment or two before we go
Yes.
on?
Go ahead. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one of the things that struck me as I was preparing for this and reading the materials was the energy and effort that we're putting into this, these business support programs and the arts and culture programs, which is fabulous. And I want us to do this. I totally want us to do what we can to keep our small businesses alive and keep our arts organizations alive. But I'm concerned about the slow movement on the side, of the support program for renters and people of lower income. And I'm glad that Mr. Lanzafame started this off mentioning the challenges and the work they're doing. And I just want to reiterate how important it is that we make sure that we do everything we can to get those programs launched as well, because certainly that's where the greater need is, I believe. And we will not nearly have the kind of money we're going to need to cover the need. Unlike on the business side, it looks like we probably have ample funds to cover the requirements. So I just want to emphasize that point. I absolutely support staff's recommendations here, and I think they're doing a good job. I want to thank Jennifer and Phil and everybody on the team for working so hard to make all this happen. And it makes me proud. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jennifer Hirmontu, thank you for the report. And Mr. Shaffer, you are gone from here. Thank you for your help. Okay, may I have a motion for these items?
I move the item.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Devine.
Well,
Now, let's roll call, please.
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Agajanian.
Yes. So what's next, Mr. Adjournment?
Next would be adjournment.
Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. With that, we adjourn at 3 o'clock. Good.
How about that?
Thank you. Okay. Now.
Hey, are we ready for